creative journey. It's easy to get lost, but don't worry, you'll lift off. Sometimes you just need a creative pep talk.
What is the most important thing to focus on in your creative practice? Is it about just grinding and trying as hard as you can to push it forward, or is it more about letting it go and letting it flow? Do you need to focus on quantity and just pumping out as much stuff as you humanly possibly can? Or is it about holding back, curating the quality of each decision and each launch and what you put out there into the world? What is the most important thing to focus on? Everybody has different opinions, and I would say they're all wrong because it's the wrong question. It's not about what is the most important thing to focus on in your creative practice. There's a question before that, which is, what season are you in? What stage are you in? Because all of these things are important to be a top priority at different times in your creative process. And the difficult part, or the most top priority that you have, is to make sure you know what stage are you in. Discern what is the most important by figuring out the season you're in, because that determines what your focus needs to be. And that's a pretty big challenge. Now, today on the show, we have Chris Piascik. He is a buddy of mine. He's a podcast guest that we had on just like 7 years ago. He's an illustrator I've known for a long time. He's also ADHD, cut from a similar cloth in some ways, and then in a totally different fabric as well. I always have a great time chatting with him for that reason. Chris did a super long daily drawing project where he was posting a new thing every weekday for a long, long time. And then he's since moved on to posting YouTube videos and really a more curated release that is a little more sporadic. And last time he was on the show, we had a big chat about his daily drawing practice. This time we talk about moving from that stage into this current stage that he's in, how he knew it was time to switch, where his focus has shifted since. And I think that there is a lot in this conversation that can help you figure out where you are right now, where your energy maybe needs to be focused, and how to shift that when the time comes. Had a ton of fun catching up with my buddy Chris, and I hope you really enjoy the episode. There's a lot of stuff that inspired me and Sophie as we were going back and working through it. Stick to the very end for our CTA. Every single episode of the show, we try to give you something to do with the ideas, not just to feel good, but to do something with them. And usually the CTA, it's a call to adventure, a creative call to adventure. This time it's a little bit different. It's a call. No, it's not a call. It's a choose your own adventure. It's choose the adventure. And we're going to give you 2 prompts, and they are going to be determined by which stage you're in. So if you're in an earlier stage of your creative practice, you might do the first one. If you're in a later stage, you might do the second one. And hopefully it will get you thinking about and acting with the priority of the season that you're in. All right, let's get into it. I was watching a bunch of your videos, and
thanks.
One of the things, and they're great. I mean, I love it. I love what you're doing. It's awesome.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
And it must have been an old video, and you were just talking about getting it, or maybe, no, it wasn't. Maybe it was, I listened to the podcast episode we did years ago.
Oh yeah.
Talking about getting up at 9 or 10 a.m., drawing on the couch with your dogs. And I thought, I bet you're not doing that anymore. Yeah. I thought, oh man, those days.
9 or 10 o'clock feels like 3 o'clock in the afternoon at this point.
Yeah. I figured that was true.
Yeah, man, totally. Like I'm still trying to adapt my lifestyle because it was just so wildly different.
Yeah. It's hard. It's a hard shift. I mean, we had the benefit of never having been adults without kids, really.
Yeah, I did it a long time.
Yeah. So, which also, makes us less prepared parents. So that there's definitely pros and cons to that. But we didn't get used to a lifestyle. We you know what I mean?
Yeah. That was the hardest thing for me.
It's tough. It's actually kind of related to the main thing I want to talk to you about, but we'll get to that bit later. One thing is, before I go here, how's things in general, other than being sick and being overwhelmed?
Actually, things have been good. They feel crazy right now just because there's been so many non-workable days. Cause I can't do anything when my kid's home.
Yeah.
So, I just feel like I'm very behind on a lot of things, but aside from that, things are great. I feel like throughout my entire life, like career life, I keep accidentally doing things that help me because with the growth of my YouTube channel and everything that goes with that, it's really making up for client work being slower than it has been in the past. And I didn't intend for that to happen. I just have stumbled into these things over and over again throughout my career.
And one of the things you talk about a lot that I completely relate to is just trusting your curiosity. And that ends up kind of carrying you a lot of the way. There definitely been some times where I needed to step back, really rethink some things or take some strategic action, or I had a lightning bolt of insight that helped me make a shift. But the majority is that curiosity thing of just making sure. And that's why I think ADHD people are naturally creative, is just because they get bored. So they have a natural thing of looking over here, I wonder what's that. Let me go that way.
And I think on top of that too, it's that you hyper focus, so you take it more seriously.
Yeah.
So you don't just dabble in all these different things. You lock in on some things and you just focus on it and give it all this extra attention. And it's, when you put a lot of effort into something,
There's so many good and bad things about that. I've thought about how many little tangents I went on and thought what if you were able to just put that into a master's degree or a PhD? What if you could have just lined up that sauce alongside doing anything other than just you read 10 books on that topic and then you never wanted to think about it ever again? You're
yeah.
So
yeah.
So
that's true.
Yeah. But in the creative practice, if you can channel it in there, it can be a pretty powerful thing.
Yeah. I feel for me, it seems like the times where it takes me off on a tangent, it's usually smaller problems than longer scale things.
What do you mean?
Well, with making videos for YouTube, I'll be behind and I'll be oh, I need to record a video or something like that. And I'm still learning that I need to plan out better, but I'll be oh, this is something I can do quickly. And then I start changing it. And then it gets so complicated and takes so long. And I have no idea what's happening. And I'm well, if I just thought about this for more than 5 minutes, I would have known, but I just, went all in without planning.
But yes. And that's the way I do most things. But I also think that the more I learned about I think about these two ways of being creative, puzzle strategery. I was going to say strategic, and then I backpedaled. Strategic creativity. That's much more create with the end in mind, where it's a mystery. And then there's the exploratory, improvisational. You don't know what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, the more I learned about the strategy side, and I got better at that, then I had to really force myself to go back to doing it the way you just described, which I would think more of as the improvisational, because when I would write long form and really not control it, the most interesting things would happen from, no, so much of it is a waste of time.
Yes, for sure. And it's tricky because like I struggle with that whenever it's something's like feels like I don't know. One of the things that feels like the hardest thing for me is time and like it just going away all the time. So when I spend time doing something that doesn't relate to like doesn't benefit, it just feels like I get so frustrated. But those kind of things are necessary because it helps you come up with new things.
That's one of the reasons why diversifying your creative practice in a few different ways, I think, is so essential, because wasting time, and I really believe this, and I think there's all the evidence in the world to support that wasting time is one of the most essential parts of creative practice. And yet, if you live in a society like we do, and you're a parent, and this is your job, everything is against you wasting time, which like the researchers call it playing with the problem rather than trying to solve it. Playing with the problem is messing around. Like, and so I'm like obsessed with getting into that space, figuring out how do I get into that space in pockets that I have that I will create for it, because everything else is trying to get me to do the opposite of that. It's really hard.
Yeah. I feel like I feel that in so many different, like I fully believe, and it's still so hard to not feel like I'm wasting time. Like, even though I know I am, but like it's important.
Yes.
I also find that I get into this weird mindset where like, I'm like, oh, I can't do my creative drawing stuff right now because I have to do important business stuff. And I'm like, but that's what you do. So that's the important part. I'm like, I can't do this. I got to send some emails or like, do something else. It's like, for what? That's the making stuff is what I do. Otherwise I'm just a secretary.
Yeah. And the funny thing is there's you have this myth as you're coming up that when you go full time, then you can like guilt free waste time making stuff.
No, that's what you can do when you have a job.
Yeah, true. Exactly. That again goes back to why it's good to have a few different ways that you make money, and the more consistent, the better. And actually, I'm actually going to do an episode about going part-time, like that being the goal. And there's a bunch of different reasons of how I mean that. I don't even mean like doing anything different than what I'm doing right now, but like, what is the thing I'm creating space for that is for me only? Because I always had that when I was like trying to level up my creative practice and trying to get paid to do things that nobody was paying me for. And I always had that for a long time. I had this blip of time where, all the things I wanted to do are part of my job now. And now I don't have anything that I'm like, I'm doing this because I want to do it. Ooh, that's bad. That feels bad, because you really lose why you're doing it, Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's sort of why I started the Daily Drawing Project a million years ago.
Really?
Yeah. Cause like my whole, childhood and like high school and college was like just getting to this point of, I want to be a graphic designer and I want to do all this stuff. And then like getting that job and like realizing after a couple of years that like the only drawing I was doing was just like sketches for projects. Yeah. I was like, wait a second, I'm not doing this anymore. I need to draw more. And that's not enough for me to actually commit to something. I need to put in structure or rules, or I need to hyper focus on it, or it's not going to happen at all. So,
yep, I totally get that. And I love, one of the things I wanted to talk to you about was I love this stage that you're in. It's very fun to having been peers and friendly friends online,
friendly friends
for long. It's just cool. This is a complete aside, but I just want to say, I just had a sense of, as we're watching so many things get automated, and I saw this like long list of comments from illustrators that I've known for a long time. And I just thought, man, even ones that I'm not like a particular fan of, I have a sense of who they are because they make this work, and they've like crystallized a thing and they have an identity, and I just love it. I just love it's so cool. When I don't know, I had a weird step back moment. I was like, that's so cool. If I think about this person, that, like I have this sense of they've been practicing for a decade and they have this, like, this is who they are. And knowing you for a long time, I have the benefit of like watching that, and you being in this new stage where you've been doing YouTube and all that has just been so cool to watch.
Thank you.
Yeah. I just think it's awesome.
I mean, it's mainly your fault too. You're the one who told me that I should do it.
I don't even remember saying that. I swear to you.
You said, you really need to try to get yourself in front of the camera more.
Really?
And like, I don't even remember the context, but I think about it all the time.
Yeah. I think
I'm like, how did he know? Because like, yeah, I don't.
Yeah. I don't remember saying that specifically.
It was on Instagram. Okay. We could probably find it. It was in a DM.
Was it?
Yeah.
I remember, the only thing I can remember is, I'm guessing it was something about maybe Skillshare videos or like your Skillshare promo or something. And I just thought your editing was good. It was funny. It was dry, and it just complimented your work well. And it was something that maybe I knew from being around you, but if you just followed you, you wouldn't have seen. You wouldn't have known that, and it just kind of made it feel more 3-dimensional to me. But yeah, I mean, you've done even crazier things and cooler things than I would have imagined. Well, I appreciate the push. Yeah. One of your recent videos, I believe, you're talking about kickstarting your illustration practice. And one of the things I wanted to see if you just talk about a little bit was you called it draw stuff you like. And do you remember what you said about that? Yeah. Can you talk about that a little bit? Because I just think it's deceptively simple. Yeah. Really, it's true. Powerful. Well, so I think, for me, and I think a lot of other people, when they're like starting out and you're like, how do I start getting work? Like, how do I get hired to do illustration work? You start like looking at people who do illustration work and who are successful. And then you start to think like, okay, well, I need to make this kind of work, or like, I need to like think about what someone's going to hire me to make. And then you start trying to just make stuff based on that. And that's not a very creative place to make things from. It's like, yeah, like you see, also too, like the assignments that sometimes you see that even great illustrators do, generally the art director saw something else that they made and they just sort of wanted to adapt it to this new thing. So maybe that original thing was more interesting and it was maybe about something else entirely. But for me, the biggest thing in realizing this was, the stuff that I made thinking that it would get me hired or people would see, like, didn't really get much attention. And when I started drawing and like illustrating and making stuff about stuff that I was interested in, not only did I have more fun doing it, so I'd like spend more time on it and I would enjoy it. And I would also have this like deep knowledge about what I was making too. And that allows you to like make it even more interesting because you can like put in all these other special things or like maybe little inside jokes or just lots of little things that make it unique and special. And then when you put that stuff out there, it's going to appeal to a broader, you're not just like making something that you think an art director is going to like. You're making something that you like, and then other people who like that are really going to resonate with it. And if it's great illustration, those are, people who might hire you will see it, but then it's going to get in front of people who maybe don't even care about illustration, but they care about that thing. And then that's going to spread it out. Yeah. I mean, it's a good example of this is a long time ago, I drew like every bike that I've ever had. And, people who weren't into illustration, but are into cycling were like, oh, I remember I had the same bike and I love this, and telling me their stories about it. And it just like resonates on a deeper level. And then it ended up, getting picked up by Bicycling Magazine, and then just, led to a bunch of work within the bicycling industry. And I feel like if I tried to like make something for an art director to see, that's like, I would have never thought to do that. And if you thought, oh, it looks like there's tons of good jobs in the sneakerhead world, I'm going to start drawing sneakers, but you don't actually give a shit. It's not going to, people's BS detectors are finally attuned. And it kind of reminds me of how, sci-fi books like The Martian or Three Body Problem are written from these people that have or they're scientists, science backgrounds that are really knowledgeable. And then, I don't know anything, but as I'm reading it, I can tell that this stuff sounds right. It sounds, and there's just something about the way that you're drawing the bikes or when you did the cars. Did you mention that one?
In the video I did, yeah.
Yeah. What was that one?
So, one of the other things that I've always been interested in is like cars. Like I do track and autocross racing stuff, and I just like weird old quirky cars. Yeah. So I was drawing a whole bunch of different cars, and an art director at Hot Wheels saw them a while back and was like, oh, I really love these. Maybe we can work on something in the future. And a couple of years later, they did this series of these like exaggerated features cars that look sort of like the ones that I did. And they asked me to do the packaging for this limited edition set. So it's like a perfect little circle.
I remember seeing Draplin in my early days talking about this kind of idea of he would just be making stuff that was to do with just kind of random things that he liked, like estate sales and mustard and just weird things. And initially thinking like, I don't even know how you train your brain to think like that. To even notice the kind of things that you like that, or why that would matter. And then later I kind of realized that, people really need something to grab onto, like a noun. Like artists talk about their work in adjectives, whimsical, colorful, that kind of stuff. But people think about nouns. So for me, like when I did the Dream Journal, I did that because I just love dreams. And I never thought, oh, this is going to turn into getting hired to do a picture book for someone who's a dream, it's a dream picture book and these editorials and all this stuff. And I realized like, it's much easier to be to stand out, not in the drawing world or the illustration world as like the best. It's easier to be like the best drawing illustrator in the dream world or in the podcasting space, or, it's a different way to differentiate yourself too.
That's also two things you said that are super important to the whole drawing what you like thing is like standing out and differentiating yourself. Yes. And if you're someone starting out and you're trying to, like, you want to, like you said, break into the sneaker world or something like that, you're looking at this stuff and trying to make your version of that kind of thing. And one, that person was hired because they've mastered it. You know what I mean? And you're just making like a bad version of it or like okay version, but like it's not going to stand out. It's going to look like that thing.
And even if it doesn't turn into work, it helps people have a 3-dimensional picture of you. Like when we talk about, if I was talking about when Waxahachie had this album out that I loved, it's easy to be like, oh, that was the like sober one. It was like the one where she got sober. And there, something to like grapple, to like hold handles for this thing. You need that as an artist. So even if it doesn't turn into a job about cars or bikes or whatever, people need things to be like, oh, it's this, this, and this. That's that person.
Yeah. And I also think that's important too. In like, with all the AI stuff, like the thing that makes us unique as humans is like us being humans and like that interaction. And, the people who are hiring illustrators are also people. And they, if they're looking at a lot of different work and one of these illustrators shares similar interests and seems like someone that they'd want to work with, that's going to really play a heavy part in the selection.
What I want to say, I don't believe is dicey, but it's just slightly.
Here it comes.
It says after that is dicey. It's not really, but it just made me think like, I don't. the most like woo woo version of manifesting. I don't get down with that. Okay. That's not my jam at all. But I also am trying to be sensitive to people that do that. So I'm trying to be sensitive to that. However, this is this is like an active, creative version of that has work behind it, that has like action and just energy behind it. And that's by you're actually making something. So you're taking those things that you love and not stopping there, but you're doing stuff with it, and it's turning into things in the real world, and it has like a creative generative thing. So I'm not saying that it's woo woo, but I am saying that it's like, it's a way to take some of those vision impulses and do something with them by like making this work about stuff that you love, or, there's like an active creating your life energy to like, also like all those cars you don't own.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like there's just like a weird, does that make sense?
Yeah.
I
think so.
And anybody, okay? I'm sorry. I'm not against
which part of this was offensive. I'm just trying to pull that out.
Look, some people are super down with manifesting woo woo stuff. Other people are like, so let's get those guys. And I'm just saying that this feels like an interesting marriage of letting yourself hope and dream and aspire, and that actually leading to something powerful and active and creative. And does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And it also sort of, I feel like there's a trick being played on me or something. Because right before this, I was like dealing with a whole bunch of spam messages on my newest video where it was like about manifestation and like manifesting, but it was all like plugging, like I was doing this until I watched this video by this person and it manifested this. But there was like all these accounts with this like very similar message.
Yeah.
And I'm like trying to delete them all. And then I get on this call and you're talking about manifestation destiny.
I'm sorry. And it's just, to me, it's like, I think.
Were you leaving those comments?
It was me. I was actually an AI generative robot that was doing, create some fake sense of synchronicity. But I think I'm interested in when researchers talk about these kind of things, that the people that are actually well within the evidence, they'll talk about how sports players, athletes, some people call them,
gladiators, if you will,
using what's it called? The vision something, where they're not just envisioning the outcomes, they're doing that, but they're also envisioning the work that it would take. Like they're thinking about them exercising, they're thinking about them, how they're going to exercise, what their form's going to be. They do all that stuff and it improves their results. And so I'm interested in things like where we get attracted to an idea, but we miss the point. And so I think that's what interests me about that.
Isn't it just sort of like planning and thinking about it?
Yeah, just like dreaming and then, doing something.
Yes.
I just thought it was cool because I thought like, this is something where you're just like, I did a thing last year too, where as I was leading up to the new year, I thought I'm going to do a painting of everything that I want to be happening in the new year. And I actually didn't even share it. I just put it, I made it my wallpaper on my phone for like a month. And it's just kind of like this. It was just one step further than goal setting. It was like, I'm going to create something that starts to make this real, and I'm going to spend the whole time I'm making this thing, I'm meditating on these things, and it's just like, that's what that little YouTube segment reminded me of. It was just like, this is like you just kind of like creating these worlds and these realities. Like that's what's cool about it, is that you're doing all this stuff and then 2 years later, it's what you're doing. So there's almost a magic to it. I guess, even if it's completely material, you know?
Yeah, it does. It seems like that from the outside. I feel like there's a video I did a while back where I talk about like my career path, and there'll be like lots of comments about it. Just like, oh, so lucky. And I'm like, yeah, sort of. But I also posted a new drawing online every day for 14 years.
Yes. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about was the main thing was, how did you manage that transition in terms of stopping a thing you've done for 14 years is, I have to imagine, an incredibly difficult decision to make. And so I wondered if you could talk about how did you decide to do that? What things contributed to feeling like, yeah, I'm ready to do something different?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I stopped the daily drawings like 3 years ago when my kid was like 6 months old, because I was just, if you've ever had a baby, it's there's a lot to do, and I was just not sleeping, and I was also changing from like this life of doing whatever I wanted at any moment to like realizing that because I had such freedom, I would like stretch things out, or just like, I was very willy-nilly. I didn't realize how little structure I had. And then I'd like have to force myself to like get all of my work done in a very short amount of time. So I couldn't just like not do the client work because, I have to pay the bills. So I tried to keep doing the daily drawings, and then I physically couldn't do them anymore. So I stopped, and it sucked. But then I was like, all right, well, everything's fine so far. And nothing fell apart. But so like that I was forced to stop doing the daily drawings pretty much. Just like I was forced to go full-time freelance as an illustrator when the economy crashed and the design studio is at kind of imploded.
I love that. What were you going to say?
No, that was it. Like, it's just like I kind of get forced into these decisions accidentally.
What that reminds me of is in like story structure, usually most heroes are forced on the journey. They're and
I'm definitely a hero.
You are definitely a hero. And guess what? You said that in the last one when I mentioned the hero.
Oh my God. Oh geez.
I love it. I love when somebody's individualism is just like coded into them. Like you.
It's the worst.
I love it. It's so funny. But it just, for now, you are the hero. You're the hero of this episode.
Absolutely.
Okay? And I want you to
no question.
The hero is usually the reluctant hero, forced to go on the journey. Very rarely is a character like, yeah, I'm going to go do something hard and challenging that's going to wreck my status quo. Like, so I like that. So the first thing is pain, unbearable pain, frustration, and impossible to carry on. Like that.
Nobody could do it.
That's, but it's true. Like, just like you said, like these were scenarios where it was like, that stage is no longer happening. I've hit the wall on that stage. But the reason I think that's worth mentioning is when something's worked, that's fine. Like this is one of my difficulties right now as I'm trying to navigate a different stage, is that when you are forced out of a job that you're not crazy about, that's an easy stage shift. So like a lot of the early stage shifts that I had in my creative practice were like that because every stage I wanted to go to the next one. Like, but when something's really worked on some level, even if it's not working the same way that you wanted it to, or even if whatever, it's harder to move to the next stage.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't think I would have left otherwise.
Yeah.
Because it was like what I spent my whole childhood thinking was my dream job.
How do you think it changed you?
It made me think about things that I never imagined. For example, someone commented on my last video saying, Al Bundy makes art. And I had never thought that I had gotten to that level of old yet, or that I even looked like Al Bundy. But now that's something that's in my head forever.
What a change. That's big. That's huge.
I know that's not the right answer, but I honestly don't know how I've changed.
Maybe you don't. I don't know. I'm just curious. I just wanted to see if anything else was there, but it's a fascinating. I love the way that creative work, creative practice, especially creative habit changes you. Like when I went back and listened to our episode from years ago, episode 181, I can barely, I mean, I hate listening to myself. And
oh my God.
Even more.
Like my early videos.
Oh my God. But I'm interested in, what if I wasn't making that podcast? I might be that person today.
Yeah.
There's a way in which it changes you.
Yeah. I mean, it's sort of similar. I have this idea for a video where it's like, redoing like old drawings to like proof that you've gotten better, and you like looking at it differently and how you do it. And it's like you can be like, oh, this is literally how much better I've gotten. Cause it's hard to know when you're doing it like every day. And man, just looking at I was looking at like old drawings. And I'm like, this is trash. Like I posted this online thinking, look at me, I'm an illustrator who wants to hire me. And like, they're just, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So bad.
Yeah. I can relate big time. What do you have any YouTube clips? We've started posting there. I'm not as invested as you are because it's kind of an extension of the podcast, but I love YouTube, and it's a place where a lot of people I like and relate to make stuff. And a lot of people that listen probably have been curious about it too. What can you tell us?
Well, I never thought, like I assumed, I don't know, I had like preconceived notions about YouTube, and like was like, oh, I would like kind of like the idea of a YouTuber being like a joke to me or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think it's just because it's so big, you can like find those stereotypes. But it's I don't know. I like the community that I found on YouTube has just been amazing, and it's just been incredible, and like just like interacting with people who are like watching all the time, and like I don't know. I think because when you're watching someone in a video for 20 minutes or whatever, like you start to feel like you know them a little bit more than just seeing a picture or scrolling through other social media.
The community aspect, did that come from just the nature of one of the great things about YouTube is its organic reach just based on topic? Is that kind of how that came about? Just like this community found you?
Yeah. And there's like all different kinds of things. Like I did a video early on about like ADHD things that I deal with as an illustrator. And like, it's not a top performer for me, but like there's so many like people who are like, oh my God, this is the most seen video I've ever, like the most thing I've ever related to, or blah, blah, blah. So there's like a lot of people there. And then just like, I just feel like it comes from lots of different areas of people who have found my videos. But yeah, and then there's like a Discord with the channel, and like I'm bad about going on there often because I never really used Discord before this. So, but there's just like people sharing work and talking all the time on there, and I'm like, this is crazy.
That's awesome.
But yeah, and like I do live streams every Friday, and there's like always very familiar faces, but then there's new ones, and yeah, it's just it's really cool. It sort of feels like when I'm doing the live stream, it feels like I'm like hanging out with these people that like, you know, I comment back and forth with all the time, but I don't even know what I'm answering right now.
I don't know either, but I enjoyed it. And I think it's interesting too. The stages for me, there's another layer there where at first you're kind of just like creating, this is like the work, this is the kind of the product or something. And then you're moving into, now you have this deeper relationship with people, and it's, you're going deeper. You have, more of a connection, and there's maybe even more meaningful to you as a creator on some levels. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah. I mean, which is, I would assume the same as like a podcast, because you're like, person's whispering into your ear for an hour.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. Well, that's awesome, man. Dude, I'm really happy for you. And it looks like it is just gone really well. I know it's got to be a ton of work, but it seems like it's paying off.
Yeah, I mean, it's fun, and I enjoy doing them. This was awesome getting to chat with you again. It doesn't feel like it was that long ago that we did that episode, but it was, how many years ago was it?
I don't know, but probably at least 5 or 6.
Oh my God. I was a totally different person. Yeah. Never, I was sure that I would never have a kid.
Yeah. Yeah. You promised me in that episode, I will never, ever have a child. You said that.
I meant it.
Well, dude, thanks for doing this. I'm glad we got to catch up. I hope we get to hang out in person sometime soon. How do people find your YouTube and what you're doing?
It's just Chris Piascik everywhere. Piascik. So, but if you just spell it wrong, I have the clout on YouTube that you'll probably see it anyway.
Absolutely. You could put all kinds of weird P words in there and you'll find Chris.
Yeah. Any P word you want.
I wouldn't go that far. I'm back to give you a call to adventure. Well, choose your adventure. Choose the adventure today as the CTA. First of all, thanks to Chris for making the time to chat. It was great hanging out with you, bud, and I hope we get to do it again soon. Hope to see you in real life sometime, man. You go check out Chris Piascik on YouTube now, you hear? He's got great stuff on there. He's making all kinds of interesting stuff about Adobe Fresco, a lot of like drawing on the iPad kind of thing. Also sharing his stories and insights and some really interesting drawing challenges, just tons of fun too. He edits them well with all kinds of bells and whistles. He just does great stuff. So I appreciate you, man. And I'm back with the creative choose the adventure. And you've got 2 choices depending on the stage that you're at. If you're just starting out in your practice, I recommend you do the CTA that we talked about at the start of the episode. Draw what you like. You've heard do what you love, but what about just what you like, man? What's the stuff that you're just like into? Just draw those things. You know, there's a lot of times where if I just trust that, like, man, I've been enjoying drawing snakes lately, or drawing skulls, or drawing swords, whatever S word you want to draw, that stuff. Just trust it. And then you can editorialize it. Then you can frame it. You know, it's that kind of like Studio, another S word. Phil Collins, I believe, he's like making that song in the studio, doing Studio, just says some random stuff and then rolls with it. It's like, you know what? Let's just keep it. Sometimes you just keep it. Then sometimes you mold it into actual lyrics, Phil Collins. Hello. Come on, man. Go the extra mile. Actually, that song's great. But just draw stuff you like. And the more that you do that, the more you're going to connect with people that like that stuff. And lots of interesting things can happen when you do that. I did a bunch of series on this show about video games because I got really into video games in my old age again. In my 30s, I got back into video games. Zelda, Elden Ring, Zelden Ring. That's not a thing, but that'd be cool. Cool mashup. And I've done all this stuff on video games, and I got a job doing stuff for Xbox because of that, because I vocalized it, because I put it out there into the world. So if that's you, if you haven't really done a lot of that, explore doing that. Maybe you're late in your career too, but you never really let yourself like anything and just make something. Do it. Try it. Or if you feel like, you know what, I've done that. I've done a lot of that. Maybe you can do the second one, which Chris brought up, which was redraw what you like. Go back to a drawing that you like, but you feel like, if I did this again, I'd do it in a totally different style. One of the ways I've done this is when I have went to make something I really like that I did in gouache, traditional painted thing, and I wanted to turn it into something that had flat color for a sticker or a shirt or something, then I would be using this other technique that I use. And some of the stuff that I've made that used to be paintings and now they're these flat color things are like some of my all-time favorite things that I've made. And also I learned interesting things from that. I actually have a piece that I did for a magazine that I've been wanting to redo, not because I don't like it, but because I want to remember what it feels like to make that piece. And I think this is an interesting thing that happens. I imagine if you're a musician and you have to go relearn old songs, that it actually might unlock some things that you've left in the past and forgot about. So maybe you're in a later stage and need to do that. But ultimately, I hope that you reflect a little bit on what stage you're in, what things that you need to let go of, what things you need to bring forward, and maybe revisiting some old stuff will help you do that. Massive thanks to Chris Piascik for coming on the show, having a chat. Huge thanks, just an equally huge thanks to Sophie Miller, who helped me craft this episode, editor on the show, co-producer on the show. Huge thanks to Connor Jones for audio and video edits and sound design. Thanks to Yoni Wolf and the band Y for the theme music and the glorious soundtrack. And until we speak again, while we're speaking now, might as well thank you for listening. And until we speak again, stay pepped up.